the one on the table, just the pedestal arrangement on the table. So, but what I wanted to do with this was to actually talk about alternative styles, because this is polychromatic. Your class is monochromatic, so we have to really think about that as being very different. But the reason I did this today is simply because it's very different in terms of the actual style and the rules you would use. So this is more of a Flemish interpretation, like an old Dutch master painting. And we know that old Dutch master paintings and Flemish style is very different than, say, an English garden or American country style, because those arrangements were never made. They were painted from individual studies of flowers that were done seasonally. So the artist took a painting or a study of a flower that was painted at a certain time of the year with a flower that might have been very exotic and put them together. They never existed in an arrangement at the same time. Those paintings, those arrangements were created by artists out of flowers that they had done individual studies on or had seen individual studies on. So what we see in this is very different than a typical garden style. You see, number one, usually a lot of times because the larger dramatic flowers that we would normally use near the bottom of an arrangement, a garden style arrangement, are usually at the top. We get these dramatic flowers because those big dramatic flowers had long stems on them when they painted them and when they did the horticultural studies on them. So you see the amaryllis, which isn't quite bloomed up, the allium up like they would grow, you know, a lily up tall like it might grow. But then you see the individual materials, and you see that this is very polychromatic. It is not at all monochromatic or a controlled color harmony. Even though the artist was going to put together a pleasing composition, it is much less controlled in terms of the color harmony. Very few of them are monochromatic or analogous. They're mostly all polychromatic. So you see the blues with the yellows, with the corals, with the different shades. You see all these flowers that were never grown together at the same time or in the same place. Parrot tulips, with gerbers, with amaryllis, with summer allium, with exotic orchids that would not have been grown in the garden in Northern Europe. And so it's just a study in that to look at how different that is than something that we would do today in a garden style arrangement. So, not really pertinent, other than to understand the difference in how we place those flowers and what we do. So, I think, what is the category with just the monochromatic arrangement?
There's one that's just monochromatic.
Yeah. But I can't remember what we call it, though.
Monochromatic.
If I got their schedule.
I got it. Thank you. Celebrate love.
Celebrate love. So, with that, certainly we want to think about a romantic color, or something that's you can explain if you chose a non-romantic color. So, we're going to start, again, I've just used a big compote here. To get this up some height, this is going to be the single element on a 30 or 36 inch table. So what we want to do is kind of look at the flowers we've got that work together color-wise, what we have, and of course we're going to look at things like liatris or a line flower. We don't want to use a line flower tucked down in the arrangement where a form flower or a mass flower would be. So we're going to use those liatris up tall. And I'm going to do this maybe a little bit differently than we might do in a typical English garden, because you're looking for something that's going to have some distinction in your class. So if you just do a random salt and pepper arrangement, it's not going to have very much distinction to it, because you're going to be depending on the color and the flower types and everything else to carry that. So I'm going to group this a little bit more. It's going to carry a very similar feeling, but we're going to get a lot more impact through the individual materials.
Tommy, how are you scaling the height of the flowers?
The old-fashioned rule is 1.5 to 2 times the height or diameter of the container. So we're about 1.5 times the height of the container here, roughly. So that gives you that proportion in terms of the scale of the overall design to the container. And because this isn't really a vague interpretation, we can bring some of these line flowers down with it. We may add those in a minute to do that. Yeah, and I think I did all these kind of with that in mind. So yeah, viewing them from all sides is going to be important. So again, we're going to look at the attitude of these materials as we put them in. If we have a strong curve or something else to it, we need to look at that and pay attention so we kind of know. So if this has got a slight curve to it, because we're doing a radiating design here, we're not doing what we did in the vertical circle. This slight curve is going to go out because this arrangement is radiating. So we want to have everything going out, as opposed to what we did in the white one, where things came back up in and created that circular form. And that is actually more important than you would think, to really look at the attitude of those flowers and make sure that you're using that, because it can really throw your eye off in the design. So this has a slight curve to it. We're going to bring some of these over this way. So that group is going to be secondary. You got some. Nice light lavender. See, there's no light yellow hydrangeas to solve our monochromatic issue in the other one. I can find some light lavender ones here. So here it's a little bit less critical that we create like clusters of where I did before, where we had everything seen all at once. Here I can do things that are 2 and 2, or I can do things that are not 3 and 1 or something like that, because this has a different feel to it. We're going to use those bigger flowers to go in deep and bring our eye in and let it go back out. So the emphasis in this kind of an arrangement is very different. It's going to be created by the mass and the weight of the flowers typically, as well as their closeness. So when we get done with this, things are going to be closer at the bottom, our bigger flowers are going to be at the bottom, and that's going to help pull our eye all into that. I guess I'll mess with these hyacinths. And again, the question a while ago was about when I cut the hydrangeas and use them right in water. Usually if I'm going to cut flowers from a plant, I would condition them into water first. These hyacinths are pretty well hydrated, so again, I'm not worried about it. But with hydrangea, if you were going to put hydrangeas in foam or anything else, I would certainly recommend that you hydrated them first. Where I put them in water with that yellow and white arrangement, I'm less concerned about it because they're going to drink from the water. So again, I'm not wanting to just salt and pepper these flowers. I'm wanting to give them a little more interest. So we're going to use the stock just to step down from the allium and the liatris that we see there. See, by grouping the hydrangeas, you're really going to notice the hydrangeas here. If I put 4 around, or 1 up here and 1 over here and 1 down here, you're not going to notice it nearly as much. Now this isn't tightly grouped. This is kind of loosely grouped, so that what we get is this sort of way to move your eye from grouping of material to grouping of material. So it's just very different than a salt and pepper design.
Toomie, couldn't you almost just stop there?
I don't think it's quite ready to stop yet. I'm not getting that feeling of stop. You guys are, but
I'm not. And you want to see the roses.
yeah, the bluebird roses, the lavender roses.
Yeah, the roses are left.
Again, I'm trying to create more of an English garden full look here.
Well,
and I love that you've used the the texture of the liatris with its greens on it and
Yeah.
the allium.
I don't think it
without.
needed to be stripped
Yeah.
at all. So now again, instead of just putting one rose here, there, and everywhere, we're going to create little subgroups of them. Just because even by grouping 2 or 3 together, what we're going to do is they're going to each become more important. You're going to notice them more than you would if they were just scattered. Again, this is a pretty flowery kind of a thing, but by April, chances are you're going to have some stuff blooming in the yard. Flowering branches or things like that, they can really help. So again, when you're doing this, really think about what kind of color you think is romantic. You know, the pinks and lavender shades. I think, obviously, some of you might think that red falls into the romantic category with red roses and so forth. It's a little more passionate, I think, than romantic, but we're going to spread the roses pretty far around, but we're not going to just over cram it with them. And then the filler flower. So the fillers are going to come last. This is wax flower. It's kind of really, really nice in California right now. So, it smells great. This is really fragrant. So lots and lots of filler.
Oh, I do too. Yeah. Oh, isn't that wonderful?
So more of just a classic English garden mix with a little bit of a twist. So be able to. Again, so what, but your eye, even though things are sort of grouped in here, color helps create the harmony and the rhythm in there. But you can see how our eye can hit these hydrangeas and it anchors the arrangement. So that's our area of emphasis. But then the rhythm is created by pulling the eye up with both the line from the stem of these flowers of the larkspur and the liatris, pulls it up and can come right, hit the cluster of the allium, come right back down and play around with the roses and the stock, and then go back up and move throughout the arrangement. So what you don't want to do is have something that stops your eye in one place. So, and the surest way to do that is to take something like a Gerber or a daisy and turn it straight on its face towards you. So it looks like a big Volkswagen Beetle. So if you're doing something like Gerbers or a big form flower in this, be sure you use them at an angle or flat so that they're neutral. Because if you face it straight out, or a lotus pod, something like a lotus pod, a dried lotus pod, it's the quickest way to stop your eye right there. Your eye just gets stuck on it and it won't go anywhere. So you've got to pull the eye away from that. And
Yeah,
let,
yeah.
so it isn't looking straight at you, like a gerbera or any kind of feature flower like that. You want to have more of a profile to it. Okay. So that's monochromatic.
So pink would be considered the same color as purple. And for this, since they're
Ida.
pink considered?
Ida.
Sorry, I just called you
Okay,
that from back
No,
there.
don't.
kind of already asked.
Help over here. Sorry, if one of those side looks more flat.
Yeah. You should say, ooh, pretty.
Anything else
Did you
need
pick
to
your
use?
shirt to match the flowers?
Huh?
Yeah.
My shirt for this, yeah, this was monochromatic arrangement.
Head like that.
It looked like it needed a little depth on that side, so let's add a little bit to it. Okay. Now we're going to play with the tablescape a little bit. I didn't bring china, didn't bring anything else for this. You have to do all that yourself.
I've done arrangements, but I'm always, even though they double line them, I'm still, I'm always concerned it's gonna, where's the table?
Celebrate a birthday.
Stone one.
Oh, gotcha.
I think it's not safe.
Decide how I was doing this. Set up yesterday. So for this, I'm going to do something that would be perfect for the table setting. So you'd have to bring your own china, your own stemware, your own. And I guess since the drink is here, we probably do this because then your wine glass could go up here to the right side. Better than the other. So I'm going to do this as a spring garden because I want to be able to, like if you had Port Merion Botanical Garden, something like that. Imagine that being in here. So you can bring the liatris up. What we want to do is frame this. In this case, I want to frame it so the two people having this romantic luncheon's birthday celebration can look across at each other. So it's a very intimate birthday celebration since it's just on a 36-inch table or 30-inch table. I think it's a 36. So if we're going to frame one side with the liatris, we're going to need to frame the other side with something else. I'm going to use the blue delphinium in this case. Number one, it's a cool color. Number two, it's got a little bit of a shape to it that I can sort of frame that with. Then, somewhere here,
Will the delphinium be available in?
oh yeah, it should be available without a problem at flower show time. So since I've got the blue over there, I'm going to bring the blue back here. And again, this sort of is that whole game of moving your eye from one place to another place to another. So this whole thing is bringing that back and forth and back and forth.
Oh.
Look at the shape of that gerbera,
Yeah.
the bend in. So it's going to be perfect, just coming up, coming back in to kind of frame and come towards the point of attention there. So this one is a little bit less.
Cooperative.
We're going to use it on the other side. There's another one that has a nice curve to it. Let's just use that bend to see how if I face this gerbera this way,
Yeah.
it's going to be right in your face. So in order to balance that out, I'm going to bring a couple gerberas on the other side. What I'm going to do, I'm going to bring them shorter. So this is the dominant side that we're going to deal with. We got some rosemary from the garden.
Very fragrant. Oh,
There's some really curved rosemary since we've got that curve going on the other side. Then I'm going to bring it to this side. More. So we can bring that back and forth. So pretty far, so far it's kind of like back and forth, pretty dancey. Not very, so what we're going to do is adding some lines, some other key flowers, tulips. So looking at for this, because I'm going to use a really botanic or very gardeny china with this setting, I'm going to make it very grouped, just like it would grow in the garden. So sort of a vegetative inspiration. We've got some really fun anemones. Again, they've got a lot of attitude in the stem, so you really have to think about, okay, where am I going to use that and how am I going to use that best? So we have to think about how that works. Some ranunculus. I don't think this had to be any particular color harmony or anything, but in the class,
it's a birthday, supposedly.
it's a birthday party, so it's more fun and festive and just a celebration. This is a fern, kind of like it would grow there. This is ivy or something that grow native. These are just wooden boxes with plastic liners in them. Yeah, just like the crates that you see so much of, in design stuff now, plants and gardens. Okay, so that's some more. Actually, I'm going to start with moss. Use a little bit of moss so I don't have to cover everything up with every square inch of foam. And it gives your eye a place to rest. So using moss like that to help cover mechanics is just a good way to not have to have everything too flowery. You can really use line and form a lot more if you soften it from here. So then we've got Galax leaves, which will help us create this little foundation. It's a very low growing material. So we'll just cut those and use them really short. A little ground cover. Very clean. Very simple. Galax. G-A-L-A-X. Oops. They will continue to bloom, yeah. And they're a lot like tulips. They have a lot of attitude, so you're better off not trying to control them, just using them in a way that they can do their own thing and express that.
What are you
Because
talking about?
Ranunculus.
Okay.
They're a lot like
Oh.
tulips in
Do
terms
they
of.
continue to grow, you're saying? They continue to grow?
Yeah, they'll continue to grow. Not as much as a tulip will,
Okay.
but they open and then they get heavy and then they turn their heads and then. So, not liking those there, sorry.
What? Don't like that.
Oh, but
Maybe not all together. Okay. All right, so we've got some green trick, which makes a great filler. So this is green trick dianthus. So it gives you a great foundation. Looks like Irish moss,
Uh-huh.
and it lasts forever. So just create a lot of foundation of that.
good. Yeah. So that's nice. What's that green?
So that just gives you a nice base foundation.
Grass.
This is green trick dianthus. So it's a member of the carnation family.
Yeah.
Green trick dianthus. Green trick. Like Halloween trick or treat. Yeah.
Because they trick the carnation.
Dianthus.
So it's related to Sweet Williams, carnations.
Interesting
Yeah.
colors too for that.
So speaking of dianthus and Sweet Williams, so this certainly gives you a wonderful springy feeling. Just regular gypsy dianthus.
Yeah. Yeah.
It makes just a great foundation element. And we're going to bring it into the end pieces as well here. So hopefully when we get done here, this will feel like we've just sat down in the spring garden, have a lovely lunch to celebrate somebody's birthday. So now, because I've done this in such a negative style, but now I want something that's going to create some drama in the center. So to create emphasis here, we've got hot pink throughout this. So we're going to use these Pink Floyd roses.
So Tommy, do you stay away from fragrant flowers if it's for a,
I don't necessarily, but some people don't like to use stock and things like that if it's going to be used in something that's going to be around someone eating. Some people just don't like fragrant flowers when they're eating. So, and the Indianapolis Symphony Orchestra really doesn't like flowers, fragrant flowers when they're playing.
Yeah.
So
Really?
I just have to know, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, no lilies, no stock, no anything else
Sneezing or?
on the stage or even in the house. Okay. Let's see what else we got here.
Oh, that's pretty.
Yeah.
And they last forever.
Yeah.
After Mary, you
Miniature ones.
working from the back of this, so I can't really tell. Have an issue from the front. So that may not be completely perfect, but so on your table you would have an end framing a center with an end framing a center, and then your table setting and complete the rest of it. And again, I'm just trying to wrap it up here in the interest of time, so we can do that. But again, you can get the idea and the inspiration and figure out what works best for you in terms of completing that.
That's incredible.
Take a touch. It's not every category or everything, because I just want to talk about why things work and understanding that more than a specific thing that you won't want to copycat because everybody else has seen it here then. So you don't want to.
She's taking pictures.
So, again, just the inspiration of the idea of understanding that, how does your eye work here? So your eye flows here down the center, knowing that that's a foundation because there's hot pink roses and pave there. But it still works because of the color pulling out to the sides with the ranunculus. But it doesn't seem like it doesn't work, even though this is kind of negative and grouped. This still seems like it just works like a garden of flowers, like a carpet of flowers. Even though it's not quite as literal as same height of the flowers in relationship to each other. So, anyway.
Beautiful. Maybe there was a question about Oasis. Oasis is legal. So Oasis is legal to use your, and Michelle has had to order a big box of Oasis for workshop 2019. So I have a lot left